So why are livestock and forests so critical to a livable climate? In this series, we'll lay out a plan to fix global warming. It's not new, but it's now being revealed as so effective, I think you'll be surprised. Livestock emissions are controversial. The FAO were the first to put a figure on livestock emissions, finding them responsible for 18%, then revising that down to 14.5% of global emissions. But there are wildly different figures out there as well. In 2009, a World Watch article found livestock responsible for just over half global emissions. And now, a discussion paper by systems engineer Sailesh Rao finds livestock production to be the cause of 87% of global warming. 87%? How could that be true? We'll get to that, but first, who am I to talk about this? My eyes were opened to large-scale environmental destruction when I worked for government in Queensland, Australia. Over 30 years of satellite monitoring of forests, we witnessed 1,000 hectares of forest destroyed each day. That's nearly 2 acres of forest destroyed every minute for beef and sheep production. 2 acres every minute. It's truly breathtaking when you see it up close. They use two 50 to 100 tonne bulldozers running flat out, hauling a chain between them. Each link in the chain is more than you can lift. And trees 20 metres tall are literally ripped out of the ground and come smashing down with any wildlife that happens to live there. They call it tree pulling, and it was invented in Australia and is now used with great effectiveness in southern Brazil's Cerrado. And recently, reports on the state of the Great Barrier Reef greatly upset me. In the 1970s, I used to work on parts of the reef. We were mapping it for a World Heritage listing. I was brought to tears because we've just seen another massive bleaching or dying event, the third event in the last 5 years. It's a tragedy. It's so sad to lose what was once an astonishing wonderland of life and colour. It was truly extraordinary when you dive on the reef, and now most of it is dead. In recent years, I helped write the Beyond Zero Emissions Land Use Plan to bring agricultural and forestry emissions in Australia to zero. That opened my eyes to the curious world of greenhouse gas accounting. I won't go into detail here, but that accounting and language has skewed our thinking of what is causing climate change. For example, we found that the single largest agricultural emission source in Australia, deforestation, is not even considered an agricultural emission. That's by United Nations IPCC convention. These conventions are by intergovernmental agreement, so they're political, not scientific. Another example, using 100-year global warming accounting, as is done by convention, is arbitrary. It has no basis in science. Also by convention, some gases and emissions are not even counted. Most of these emissions come from animal agriculture. So Goodland and Anhang's 51%, Australia's 50%, and now Salish Rao's 87%. These challenge climate accounting conventions. To work through that, the scientific process then requires a robust debate to argue each case, but these studies have fallen on deaf ears. In the Australian study, we could not get a peer reviewer of sufficient standing or a high-ranked journal to publish. Deaf ears. So this video series will look at research and new evidence that challenges our concepts about climate change. We'll look at historic deforestation going back 10,000 years. We'll look at fire and how biomass is devoured on our planet, and how the green revolution multiplied consumption. We'll look at uncounted emissions and why they were kept off the books, and talk about the power of short-term greenhouse emissions like methane, carbon monoxide, ground level ozone and black carbon. We'll examine the cooling emissions and see how they effectively reduce the warming impact of fossil fuels. We'll explore the unknowns affecting carbon dioxide airborne fraction, and we'll examine the intimate link between red meat, dairy, forests, and rolling back global warming. This information might challenge our understanding of global warming, but it does more than that. When we look at it closely, it reveals that humanity has a large, undeniable blind spot. And it's all about food and forests and how we use planet Earth. But this is a good news story. We will learn how we have the power to roll back dangerous climate change and at the same time fix the extinction crisis. Wouldn't that be nice? We can be the superheroes that our kids and their kids are wishing for and protesting about. So watch the series and prepare to be amazed.